And we're continuing with the 27th chapter of The Arrogant History of White Ben, which is called Aspects of Flight. Arthur Latimer has just taken Ben up in his airplane, and it is not going so well for Ben, who now thinks that Arthur Latimer is actually a crow. I must not show my new feelings or betray my new knowledge, he thought. I must be as cunning as any of them. I must not flap my arms. I must sit as still as a windless night and listen and learn. It is going to be easy because this horrible creature who likes me is telling me without being asked that all that I need to know, but I wish he would not edge in upon me. I wish he would not put his kind, pink, carrion-raking claw on my arm. Now, having got that clear, the Crow Latimer was saying, let's try to understand each other over this question of calling names. No crows in our sky. Yes, that's a good newspaper insult. A useful election stunt. You don't suppose Bus and Jenny would be putting their entire press at your disposal if it weren't. But you're too good to let yourself be used. Jenny and Bus are my friends, but let's face it, they're on the make. Can't you smell them? Now, are you on the make? Because I'm not. Nor am I, said Ben, his voice shaken with loathing. I knew you weren't. And he looked at Ben with passionate kindness. You pose as an anti-crow because you know that scaring crows is a shortcut to power. Yet you know well enough that no country can get it on without crows naked or feathered. The real trouble is the boundaries, not the crows. At any rate, that's why I took you up, to make sure you understood, said Arthur Latimer, sodden and tender, clawing at Ben's arm. Ben shrank away. No, listen, Latimer closed in on him. There were no boundaries on my hilltop, were there now? You saw that, so either you've got to stop all flight, or you'll end by having to take down your no-thoroughfares. Transport or boundaries, you can't have both. If I didn't know that, how do you suppose I'd ever have the nerve to drop bombs? But I'm not bombing human beings, I'm bombing away boundaries, cried Arthur Latimer, his hand rattling his glass on the counter. I'm out to make one world of these Englands and Germanys and Spains, one earth and one air for all of us. But the crows, began Ben. Oh, drop it! Latimer slid from his perch with a gesture of slipping off his clothes and stood before Ben, naked of pretense, a heavy, compelling figure of a man. I won't stand there for these names and counternames, Pope or pagan, cross or crescent, crow or anti-crow. Who cares? Shouted Arthur Latimer, whose speech was beginning to blur. We've all got a right to live, haven't we? No, not you, thought Ben evilly. Not you. You are a bird of prey. But aloud he said, we must not get excited. Thought must be cool. All right. We're all human beings, aren't we? We've got to live in the same world. All right, then. We'd better put up with each other. That's my way of thinking. The other way of thinking has lasted 2,000 years. Now, let my way have its chance, will you? If I help you, will you help me? We've got to get power first, I know that. And if you think you'll get it by raising the cry against crows, well, because I believe in you, I'll drive them with you. It is expedient. As the executioner said, what's a few thousand martyrs if they save the billions of the world? But once you're in charge, will you live and let live? Why should I? Demanded Ben angrily. Well, because there's a new factor in the situation. Wings, Ben, wings. The instinct to fence ourselves has always fought our instinct for freedom, but now we've learned to use the air freedom's going to win. The world's round, you fool. People are going to circle about the world from now on, however many fences you put up, because they can fly over them. Oh, it'll take time and discipline, and that's where you come in, with your drive against the gangsters and profiteers. But once you've purged us, then no more crow baiting. Then live and let live. Is it a bargain, yes or no? Ben flinched again as Latimer thrust his face so close. He did not wish to meet the gaze of those bloodshot eyes. He would have had to lower his own or confess his thoughts, so he stared intently at the discolored flesh of the sockets, at the reddened lids, their rims tender from styes and raw air, at the thick, girlish lashes, at the brows with single coarse hairs marring the close line. And By this concentration of irrelevant detail, he managed to object with an appearance of simplicity. "If I say yes, it is only my word." "Yes, but give it," said Latimer, still holding out his workman's hand, black at the nails and smeared with recent oil. "I trust you. I always know when to trust. Will you say yes? That's all I want." Slowly, Ben put out his own clean hand and clasped Latimer's firmly. "Yes," said Ben, but to himself he said, "He is only a crow. I have a right to break my word to a treacherous, thieving crow who has kidnapped me and made me vomit." And when he had his hand back, he sat rubbing off the crow's touch. But Arthur Latimer beamed. All the arrogance of which he accused Ben was in his own voice as he said, "You're wise. You don't know how wise you are. It means something to be backed by me. Ask Buss if it doesn't mean something. Ask Jenny. This is drunken boasting. Still it means something. Have another? Oh, come on." Upon this urging, Ben had another "thank you," and then another, and would have gone on drinking from sundown to sunrise if Arthur Latimer had required it of him, for, being as yet unpractised in the art of deception, he overdid his docility. Fortunately, Arthur Latimer was in no state to be critical, and in the middle of enthusiastic elaborations of all that he had previously said, he suddenly recollected that they had been away half a day and that Jenny Oleron had no notion of their whereabouts. He rushed to the telephone. It was Ben's chance, and repulsion quickening his wits, he took it, saying to the barman as easily as he could, "What is the name of this field?" "This is the club, sir. Do you mean the nearest village?" "Or town," said Ben hoarsely, afraid that Latimer would hear. "The nearest town's Salisbury, sir." "How far from London?" "Matter of 90 miles, sir." Ah, but how much was 90 miles? He was tormented by his own ignorance. "Nothing," said Ben to himself. "Makes up for lack of scholarship. I know what a mile is, of course, but how often down the garden path is it? Is one still in England? Is one in Wales? What am I to do? Where is some woman who will tell me?" Then he heard Latimer's voice, demanding attention, and it gave him an idea. "Trunks!" shouted Arthur Latimer. "Can I telephone?" said Ben aloud, but softly to the barman. "Yes, sir. What number?" 13 Lucy Street, London, in the telephone book." "And what name, sir?" "Lady Pont." "I'll get through to inquiries," said the barman, setting another drink before him. But Ben did not drink. He sat in agony, listening to the voice of Arthur Latimer, shouting, "Trunks!" and wondering if his own plan could possibly succeed. Back came the man at last, and Ben lifted an anxious face. "Got her, sir. All calls transferred automatic to the country address. This way, sir. They're holding on." Ben overturned his high stool, and it rolled, clattering on the floor of the bar as he bolted into the passage in which the other box was placed. He shut the door on himself with nervous, clumsy fingers, and snatched at the receiver. Then the miracle happened. He heard in his ear, close to him, as his own heart beats, the voice of his Maker. He had no doubt as to the identity of that still small voice. Only once in a lifetime does revelation come to a living soul, and then there is doubt. A blind man does not doubt when fingers lift his eyelids and he sees the sky. Sorry, I read that wrong. Only once in a lifetime does revelation come to a living soul, and then there is no doubt. A blind man does not doubt when fingers lift his eyelids and he sees the sky. When the lame man takes up his bed and he does not doubt that he walks. When the bush flames, when the burning coal is laid upon shrinking lips, when the door in heaven opens, when the Spirit and the bride say, "Come," there is no doubt left in the universe. Ben, shuddering with ecstasy, whispered his need and received the answer. Then, putting up the holy receiver, he went meekly to do as he was commanded. Nobody saw him. Nobody heard his steps clanking down the asphalt passage. Nobody saw him dodge his way out between the giant wings. Ben was out in the dazzle of sunset, hobbling like a lame rabbit over the arid expanse of field as he headed for the partial protection of the juniper bushes, while Arthur Latimer still wrestled with Trunks. And over 100 miles away, the little girl Ellie ran upstairs to report to Kathy Kingham. "Who was it?" Kathy looked up from the packing. "Only someone wanting poor Lady Pont." You're to call her Aunt Bessie. All right, then. I'll call you Cousin Kathy. I said she'd just gone into the nursing home, and I told them to inquire there. Did you give the address? Yes, that was right, wasn't it? I suppose so. Who was it? I don't know. A trunk call. I thought at first it was atmospherics. It didn't sound a bit like a real voice. And that's the end of chapter 27.